There's been recent reports of crows swooping. It's highly advised that you do not take any food from meal hall as the crows become aggressive and will attack. And now heading over to our field reporter, Nicole McIntosh, who's at Noggins Farms with a special on apples.
Hi, this is Nicole McIntosh reporting to you from Noggins Farms. Today we have some visitors with us that wanted to ask me some questions about apples. Hi. I'm just wondering, I'm thinking about making some tart tatin on the weekend. What kind of apple is best to use in that recipe? Well, there are a few varieties. The Northern Spy, the Granny Smith, Honeycrisp, and Golden Delicious are all good for making apples. You know, when I make my tart tatin, I use Ida Red. Well, that works too. My question is, last night I was bobbing for apples, and I was wondering why the apples float. Well, actually, you see, apples are 25% air, and therefore they float in water. That's very interesting. Thank you. You're welcome. Alright, we also have some other questions that were sent in to us this week. Some viewers would like to know how to pick an apple. Well, you want to pick the fresh, plump, and you want to have the ones with no bruises and twist them. Some other questions were how to store apples once you have them home. You want to store them in the refrigerator so you can maintain the juiciness and crispness. Our last question of the day was where the biggest producers are in the world of apples, and that would be China. Fun fact of the day would be that apples are actually from the rose family. And now back to you in the studio.
And now we'll head over to the lab to see what's cooking in the kitchen today.
It's been a hard time. I think we made it through. Forget our past.
We'll start now by washing our hands. It's important to wash your hands before, during, and after preparing food. To do this, wet your hands with clear running water and apply the soap. Rub your hands together to make a lather and scrub them well. Be sure to get the backs of your hands between your fingers and under your nails. Rinse your hands and dry them using a clean towel. Now we'll make the pastry. While homemade pastry is delicious and simple, you can also use puff pastry. We'll put 1/4 cup of flour, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and 1 milliliter of salt into the food processor. We'll process until it's just combined. Now we'll add our shortening. The box of shortening has a lot of information on it. Using the side line guide, we can cut the amount that we need easily. And here we are, we have our 1/4 cup of shortening. And we'll add that in. And we'll pulse it until it becomes mealy. So it should look like coarse sand when it's done. See here, it looks like coarse sand. Next, we'll be adding water. So we use shortening because it makes a really nice tender pastry because it has no water content, but we need the water to help bring the dough together. So we'll add it in short spurts with some power until it becomes a rough dough ball in the food processor. There we are, now it looks great and it's coming out of the food processor. So now we're taking the dough out of the food processor. When doing this, you want to be very careful about the blades because they are sharp and they can injure you. So, a little bit about tart tatin. It was first made as an accident in the 1880s in Hotel Tatin in France. So that's a fun fact for you. So now we're going to knead the ball into a uniform shape. We'll then be flattening it into a disc, wrapping it in plastic wrap, and chilling it. Pastry is so much easier to handle when it's chilled. The shortening will re-solidify to increase flakiness, and it will become more tender and result in a more flavorful product. We'll chill it for at least 2 hours, but it's best to chill overnight. Now onto the apples. Wash the apples under cold water and peel them using a small knife. The skin of the apples is often coated with wax, which will seal in moisture, extend the shelf life, decrease water loss, and make them attractive and glossy in store shelves. So now we're peeling the apples in a circular formation with a paring knife. Be careful to watch your fingers, and you can also use a vegetable peeler to do this as well. So now we have our peeled apple. We'll half it and then quarter it, and we'll make sure to cut out the core because you don't want that to be a part of your tarte tatin. Throughout this process, it's a good idea to clear your cutting board often. You can put your waste in a bowl, and we'll show you what to do with your organic waste later. So here we are slicing the apples into thin slices. Uniform slices are best because those are the apples that will cook evenly. Perfect. Look at those great slices. So, how are you going to keep all these apple slices from turning brown? Well, we'll be adding some lemon juice to the slices to prevent oxidation so they'll stay nice and pale colored. Stir in the lemon juice to cover all the slices. And there we are. Now we're ready for the tart. It's really important to compost your organic waste because this will help save the environment and feed new crops for the future. We will now lightly grease a 10-inch cast iron skillet. We are using coconut oil today. Now, we're doing a modification using no butter and 3/4 cup of maple syrup instead of the combined sugars. So, you could be putting 1/4 cup of oil or butter into the pan instead right now. So here's our 3/4 cup of maple syrup going into the pan. Now this version will cut a significant amount of fat from the tarte tatin. And now comes the cinnamon sprinkled on top of the maple syrup. Next, we'll be adding the apple slices in a concentric circle starting in the middle, all around the pan. Now, it may look like a lot of apples and way too high, but as we learned from Noggins Farm Market and Nicole McIntosh, apples have a high volume of air, so they will shrink down quite a bit during cooking. This is a great way to get kids involved by making a nice, beautiful shape. Now, we'll be preheating our oven to 375 degrees. Put your pan of apples onto the stove and keep the pan handle in. Put the stove onto medium-high heat and cook for 20 minutes to let the sugars caramelize. This caramelization gives tarte tatin its signature flavor. Now, place a piece of tin foil or a sheet pan in the bottom shelf of the oven. Put your apples in the oven and cook again. The tin foil or sheet pan will help collect any drippings to make cleanup easier. We will be cooking this part for 15 minutes. Now, take your pastry out of the fridge and start rolling. Flour your surface and place your pastry on and flour the top of it too to prevent sticking to the rolling pin. Roll the pastry into a 12-inch circle. Now, it's important to make sure it's evenly rolled out so that it cooks evenly all throughout. Put it over top of your cooked apples. If you don't want a ton of pastry, you can cut around the edges and discard the extra dough. If not, you could tuck it over top because when you flip it over, it will be on the bottom and nobody will even be able to tell. Make sure that you do tuck in the very edges into the apples, and that will really help make a great product. So it's really important to keep cleaning as you cook to make sure that your workspace is always looking spick and span. We'll be cooking the apples again in our preheated oven. We'll be taking them out after 45 minutes. While the tarte tatin is cooking, the sugar creates a caramel that will become the topping of the tart once it's inverted. So here it is after 45 minutes in the oven. Now, cool the pan, flip it over, and take the tarte tin out. So there you have it. Fresh, frugal, and fresh.
Join us for next week's episode where we're going to show you how to make homemade chocolate cake.
Reach the stars tonight.
Well, that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks for watching Acadia News Daily, and the local weather is up next.